Hello everyone and welcome to this new video, the first video actually of the channel Friendly Helper, where I plan to share my knowledge on engineering and coding related application. The aim of the channel is to help anyone who would like to learn a new concept or is looking for some additional material to practice on. I'm planning to start with the channel or the platform MIT App Inventor, since app development is a very important topic in today's world. Any application or field can be boosted by the use of apps or mobile apps. MIT App Inventor allows you to design, test, and build your own Android mobile app. You can run it on Android devices, but you cannot run it on iOS devices. However, you can still test it if you have an iPhone, and I will get to this topic later when we reach the testing phase. MIT App Inventor has a lot of tutorials that you can start on. So I aim to start a series on a few of these tutorials just to get our feet wet and to have an idea of what we'll be dealing with. And later on, I will try to extend it to additional projects. The first project I chose to start with is the Magic 8-Ball app, because it is relatively simple, but still has enough complexity to introduce different new topics. And when you go to the tutorial, you will see that you have already some steps and the blocks that you need to use for the basic part of the application, including the media files that you may use. But you have also a section of additional topics or extra features that you can attempt. And I will focus more on these extra features while building the app. So without further ado, let's get going. So before we start, let's have a small introduction on the platform itself. So you have the front end or the designer, which is where we currently are. And this is where you design how your app will look like and what are the different components that you are going to use. So on your left, you have the palette. So the palette is basically your giant toolbox where you can see all the components that you may use when building your apps. Stuff that are usually used like buttons and labels, or more specific stuff like the media section or, for example, the storage components. We will get to these components as we move along in the series. You have the viewer in the middle, which allows you to visualize how your app will look like if you're using it on an actual phone. You can toggle for tablet or monitor screen views, but we'll stick to phone size for this demonstration. You have on the right, the components list is what you are currently using in your app. So we don't have anything right now, but this will soon change. You have the properties, which are specific characteristics to each component that you are currently using. Stuff like, for example, related to the arrangement, stuff related to the background color or any background image that you are using, font size, stuff like that. We will see that each type of component has different characteristics that you can customize and play with. You have also the media section where you upload the files, the media files that you are going to use, pictures or sound. I already uploaded two files that you can find in the Magic 8-Ball tutorial, which is the 8-Ball picture and the MP3 sound. So to be used later on. And at the back end of the platform, where you select the blocks, this is where we are gonna code the application. And keep in mind that MIT App Inventor is a block-based coding platform. What it means is that you are not gonna be dealing with text-based coding like JavaScript or what you usually use on Android Studio or Flutter, for example, but we're gonna be using blocks. So the nice software developers at MIT actually coded the features for us, and we are going to just assemble them like a puzzle. This will allow you to focus more on the problem-solving side of the problem and how to create your own features. However, since you already have the basic blocks at your disposal, you're a bit limited to what features you can build. So some features are basically not doable or would require a very complex collection of blocks that would be somehow avoided if you use text-based coding, but it would be good to start off on these ideas. So let's get back to the designer and let's start off by thinking a bit or brainstorming about our app. So the Magic 8 Ball is basically a very nice app where you just press on the image of the 8 ball and ask it a question, and you are supposed to receive a random answer. However, one key idea will pop up, which is that when you use a regular image component like this one, you have no idea, or you are not able to know if it was touched on the screen or not. So you don't, again, to the problem of features, you don't know if this specific component was touched on the screen. So to solve this issue, instead of using the regular image component, you would use a button and then add the image component on it. That way, you can actually code for the clicking of the button, and on the screen, it would appear as you clicked on the image. So to do that, all you have to do is drag a button, put it on the screen, and then go to properties. Notice that I have selected my button right here. So in the properties, you see that we have a new set of characteristics, and one of them is image, which is currently at none. You open it, and since I already loaded some media files, I can select the Magic 8 Ball image, press OK, and we already have our picture on the button. So let's just adjust the size a bit so you can find it right here in height and width. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set it at 100. Let's have a look at 100, how it will look like. So let's go with 100 by 100. It's a bit small. I'm gonna switch it to 150 just so it would be more visible. Yes. Okay, so another thing that we can do is we can remove the text on the button. So by actually going to the text property and erasing it, you will basically remove the text. So far, so good. Now we can select the screen and we can center all the components in the middle of the screen. So by selecting screen 1 and then going to align horizontal and switching it to center, you can see that the image, the button is basically now centered in the middle of the screen, and this will apply to all the components that you're gonna put later on. So next, I'm gonna add two labels, the first label and the second label. The first one is just a description label. So I'm gonna write inside of it, ask the Magic 8 Ball a question. Okay, and I'm gonna say on this one, type on the Magic 8 Ball to receive your answer. Okay, so this label, we will not be changing it. So I'm going to rename it to this title, for example, title label. Okay, and the second one will be our answer label. So it is good, it's considered good coding practice to rename your components if you are using multiple components of the same type, since when you get to the coding phase, it will be a lot easier to recognize which is which. Okay, now our answers will be shown in this answer label. So when I click on the button, I am supposed to see a new answer right here. Okay, keep that in mind when we move to the coding section. So in addition, I want to add one more component, which is in the media section, which is a small component that will give us a sound when we actually click on the button. Now, the tutorial recommends using the player. However, I like using the sound, since the sound allows you to press multiple times on the image and still get the sound, while in the player, sometimes it doesn't work. So I prefer using the sound component in this case. Now, when you place the sound component, notice that it doesn't have a lot of properties, only the source file. So I'm going to click it and I'm going to switch to the cha-ching MP3 file, and I'm going to press OK. So if you don't put a source file, keep in mind, then you will not hear anything when you test your app for the first time. Okay, and that's basically about it for the designer. You can customize it a bit by adding a background color if you wish to do so. So for example, we can try something like cyan. Yeah, like that. And that's basically it. And now we can move to the coding part. Now, in the coding part, we are going to link all the components that we have already put on our designer logically together to have the flow of events that we require. So in our case, we are going to click on the image of the magic 8 ball to get an answer. So everything is connected to clicking this button. So if I go to the button here, so you notice here on the left that you have some built-in blocks related to procedures and blocks that you are going to use in all apps basically, and you have stuff related to the components that you have already put on your screen. So if I select button 1, notice that I have blocks related to specifically button 1 alone, and you already notice that you have a difference in colors. So everything related to the green blocks, either dark green or light green, is related to the properties that you saw on your designer. So if you see here, you have set button 1.text. This is linked, if you go to the designer, to the text inside your button 1, which we removed previously. So this is very useful if you want to change a certain property, automatically using the code. And in case of a certain event, you want to change the text, you want to change the property, this is how you would do it through the code, okay, instead of having to change it manually on the screen. So in our case, we need to look for the click of the button, and we have our first one, which is when button 1.click. So when button 1.click is a conditional block. So you will be able to distinguish with practice that conditional blocks have the color yellow, and you have the word when in front of it. So in other words, it translates as when button 1 is clicked. Okay, so when the clicking event, this is what we call the event handler. When the clicking event occurs, you will do or execute whatever you put here in your blank space here. So in my case, I would think that when I click on the button, I should be able to get a random answer. So where will this random answer be stored? So if I look here, oh, I have a typo. So it's tap here. Sorry about that. I was thinking about the typing. So tap on the magic 8 ball to receive your answer. Okay, so here is where I'm gonna display it in my answer label. So if I go to answer label, and I'm gonna say set answer label.text because I'm concerned with changing the content of my answer label in terms of text. So, but this content, the thing that I'm gonna add is supposed to be something that is random, right? So what you can do is go to list and select pick random item from a list. Okay, so that way I can pick randomly one item from a list. Okay, and obviously I should define a list. So I'm going to add to it a make a list component. And if you press on the settings icon, the blue icon right here, I can add more items to it so it can dynamically expand to the size that I would require. So I think this should be enough. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 answers is enough. As a rule of thumb, you want to increase it a bit more because you are relying on the randomness. So if you have a few components, let's say you have only 2 answers, you have a 50% chance to pick one of the answers, roughly speaking, because in coding, it's not exactly random, it's pseudo-random. But we won't go into a lot of details regarding this. So I can go to text and select an empty text box from here. So go to text and select an empty text. This will be a string, basically, an empty string as we call it in coding. So I can duplicate it by simply Control-C, Control-V, or Command-C, Command-V if you're using a Mac. So I can just duplicate it to have a bunch of empty text. And then I'm going to write here some random messages, something like, I am not sure, maybe. So just a bunch of random answers, and here is where you can let your creativity flow and pick something that is really funny or just really, annoying at some point. But let's keep track of the coding aspect. So what I did here is I defined a list. And then I'm going to pick randomly one item from this list. So one random message from these 6 sentences that I put here, and I'm going to put it in my answer label. This is what I am aiming for, and this basically covers all the functionality of the app. So a small note I want to make on list before we continue. A list is basically made of multiple elements. Okay, so either you use a block that like this one, pick a random item from a list, or if you want to use another block. So if I want to use something that is a bit more specific, if you go to your list components, something like, for example, a select list item, or for example, to remove a certain item or replace a certain item, you see that you have to refer to something that is called an index. Okay, all the time you refer to an index. So an index basically is the order of your element in your list. So if I have here a couple of elements, let's say I have around 5 elements. If I want to refer to item 3, I would say select element index. Select item, I would specify the list, and the index will be index 3. Okay, so keep that in mind, that when you are dealing with a list, you can refer to a specific element by an index. We will see later how useful it is when we reach the list viewer and the list picker. Another thing that you want to consider, if you want to look at in a different from a different point of view, if you're used to text-based coding, when you define a certain 1D array or a list, you basically refer to the element, let's say, using an index. So if I say, for example, if this is my list A and I say A1, I would refer to the second element if you're using Python, or the first element if you are using something like MATLAB, for example. But we won't go deeply into these topics. I just want to give you an idea of how to refer to a certain item in a list, okay? And that basically covers what we need to do. So all we have to do now is test it, and just make a habit of testing every feature you make. So to test your app, this is the most important part. You have to go to AI Companion. So if you're using your phone, either an iOS device or an Android phone, you can download a companion app. It's called AI2 MIT Companion app on Android, or MIT App Inventor on iOS. If you want to use your laptop like I'm using right now, you can download an emulator. In this case, I am using BlueStacks. So what you do is you go to AI Companion, and then you go to your emulator and connect to this using your companion app. So let me just do this very quickly. So after inputting our code and connecting our companion app to the MIT server, I will be able to load my app and test it on the spot. So this is how my app looks like. So if I press on, I should ask the Magic 8-Ball a question and check if I receive an answer. So let's say, would this video get 100 likes? So if I press yes, so it's a bit busy right now. Let's check again. Would, for example, I have burgers for dinner tonight? If I check again, then maybe. So it's working fine. Each time that we click, we actually get a message. But you notice that I'm not getting a sound. And this is because I haven't coded the sound part just yet. So to code the sound part, you're going to go back to your coding part and select sound. And all I have to do is just call sound.play. Okay, you notice that it is a purple block. So purple block are basically action blocks. So they execute a certain function when called upon. There is no condition, just execute a certain specified task. And later on, we will see how to define our own functions that are called procedure, but this is left as another video. So all I have to do is go back to my AI Companion, generate a new code for me, and then I'm going to go to my BlueStacks, to my emulator that I am using, select MIT AI2 Companion app, write the QR code, and just connect to it. I'm going to wait for it to load. Should have it load. Okay, so right now, if I press on it, I should not only get an image, a new message, but I should also hear a sound. and it is working. Notice that sometimes it does select the same message multiple times, so you see it as not moving. This is because it's a random message, so it has a certain probability of occurring twice. So if you increase your messages, this should not show up. So as part of some extra features that we can apply, one of them is to actually make the app speak the message out loud. So instead of only seeing it as a message on the screen, we can actually hear it from the app. And to do that, there is a very helpful component that we can use. So if we scroll down to our media section, we have the text-to-speech component, which can be used. So we just drag it and put it on the screen. Now, at this point, I want to make note of something, which is what is a non-visible component. So a non-visible component is a component that does not show up on the screen, but operates in the background of the app. So it does not require any sort of user interaction. However, since it operates in the background, the result is also stored in the back end of the app. And to show it up on the screen, you will need to add an extra feature to show it on the screen, or an extra step, let's say. Now, once done, after placing this extra component, we can go to the blocks, and now we need to connect our text-to-speech to hear the message. And to do that, I'm going to go to text-to-speech, and I'm going to look for a helpful block. And then in this case, it's my call text-to-speech dot speak message. And I need to specify the message that I wanted to voice out loud. And this message is actually stored in my answer label, since I have already updated it. Keep in mind that MIT App Inventor works sequentially, line by line. So now I'm going to go to my answer label. I'm going to select the answer label.text, and now I am ready to test. Do not copy the pick random item from list again, since it will pick a random item, so probably a different answer than what you have stored in your answer label. And that's it. Unfortunately, I cannot test it on my emulator, since text-to-speech for some reason doesn't work. I don't have the right APIs or yet, but I'm working on fixing it. But it's only one line, and then you can test it on your device just to see the difference. There is also an extra feature that we can do, which is to make the button rotate when we press on it, but this requires some additional components that we haven't discussed yet, that I would like to leave for specific videos later on. And we will get back to this feature later. So I hope you found this video helpful in your project and in your applications.